Today, I'll be taking a look at the lives of two men who were nicknamed the Toolbox Killers. These men committed some of the most heinous crimes in American history. Their story is complex and non-linear, filled with twists, turns, and shocking revelations. Don't forget to like and share this video to help me reach more audience. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel to be alerted when I post new content. If you're not new and have not subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Your support helps me create more videos. The story begins with one of the Toolbox Killers, Lawrence Whitaker. Whitaker was born on September 27, 1940 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His childhood was marked by instability and trauma. Whitaker's mother, Elsie, was an alcoholic who had a number of abusive relationships. She would often leave Whitaker with his grandparents for extended periods of time while she pursued her own interests. Whitaker's father was largely absent from his life, and he never developed a close relationship with him. As a child, Whitaker was diagnosed with hearing loss, which made him a target for bullying. He was also a poor student and struggled to fit in with his peers. He eventually dropped out of high school and joined the army, where he was trained as a missile technician. After leaving the army, Whitaker drifted between various jobs and criminal activities. He was convicted of burglary and grand theft auto in the 1960s and spent time in jail. It was during this time that he met his future accomplice, Roy Norris, who was also serving time for burglary. Whitaker's troubled childhood, combined with his experiences in the military and the criminal justice system, likely contributed to his later crimes. However, it is important to note that not all individuals who experience trauma or hardship go on to commit violent acts. The complex interplay of various factors, including mental illness, social isolation, and access to weapons, also play a role in the development of violent behavior. Roy Norris, who was an accomplice to the Toolbox Killer, Lawrence Whitaker, had a similarly troubled childhood marked by instability and abuse. Norris was born on February 5, 1948 in Greeley, Colorado. He grew up in a dysfunctional family with a father who was an alcoholic and a mother who suffered from mental illness. Norris was often left to fend for himself and his younger siblings. He experienced physical and emotional abuse at the hands of his parents. As a teenager, Norris turned to drugs and crime as a way to escape his troubled home life. He dropped out of high school and joined the Navy, but was discharged after less than a year for medical reasons. He then drifted between various jobs and criminal activities, including burglary, theft, and drug dealing. It was during a stint in jail for burglary that Norris met Lawrence Whitaker, who was also serving time. The two men became friends and eventually formed a twisted partnership, committing a series of brutal and sadistic murders together. One of their victims was a young woman named Shirley Ledford. They kidnapped her, took her to a secluded area, and recorded themselves torturing her with tools from their toolbox. They even played music to drown out her screams. The recording of her torture and murder was later used as evidence against Whitaker and Norris in court. Whitaker and his accomplice were said to have kidnapped, assaulted, tortured, and murdered 5 young women in the Los Angeles area. In November 1978, Norris met up with a former friend of his, a man named Joseph Jackson, whom he had spent time with in prison. In catching up with each other's activities since prison, Norris confided in Jackson his and Whitaker's exploits and activities over the past 5 months. He described in graphic details how they committed 5 murders and how 3 additional victims escaped abduction. Jackson, shocked at the information he just heard, quickly went to his attorney for advice. His attorney advised him to go to the police. This started investigations into Bittaker and Norris. One breakthrough in investigation came from a young woman named Andrea Hall, who escaped from Bittaker and Norris's van after being tortured. She managed to escape from the van after being tortured and was found wandering in a daze by a passing motorist. She was able to provide details about the men, their van, and their methods of torture. Her testimony helped to identify Bittaker and Norris as the perpetrators. Another crucial piece of evidence was a recording of the torture and murder of one of the victims, Shirley Ledford. Bittaker and Norris had recorded themselves as they assaulted, beat, and strangled Ledford, using tools from their toolbox to inflict even more pain. The recording was later played in court as evidence against the two. Another victim, Robin Robeck, had her face sprayed with a mace and then dragged to Bittaker's GMC van before being released. Initially, police had no leads on the case, with Jackson blowing the whistle on the Toolbox killers. Police went to Robeck's home with a series of mugshots. She positively identified the two men from the shots. Police arrested Bittaker and Norris on charges of drug dealing. When Bittaker's apartment was searched, they found several Polaroid pictures depicting their victims, some of whom has been missing for some time. Inside Bittaker's van, they discovered various torture devices, including a book on how to locate police radio frequencies. They also found necklaces belonging to victims and tape recordings of the victims being tortured. Inside Norris's apartment was found bracelets belonging to one of the victims, Shirley Ledford. There were also pictures of over 500 girls taken at various places without their knowledge and consent. On February 1980, Norris and Bittaker was charged with the murder of 5 girls. Norris accepted a plea bargain to testify against Bittaker in return for the prosecution not seeking the death penalty against him. On May 7, 2008, Norris was sentenced to 45 to life with eligibility for parole in 2010. Bittaker remained unrepentant throughout his trial and even while in prison. He once wrote a letter to a friend boasting about his crimes, saying, "It's hard to believe how much fun I had in this life." His trial lasted 3 weeks. He was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. The judge also imposed additional sentences on him in case the previous sentence was ever reverted to life imprisonment. He was sentenced to additional 199 years in prison. In 2010, a man named Jack Ontweger wrote a book about Bittaker and Norris called Purgatory. Ontweger himself was a convicted murderer who had become a journalist and was trying to redeem himself. But his book caused a lot of controversy, as some people believed that it glorified the crimes of the Toolbox killers and portrayed them as some sort of anti-hero. Bittaker died on death row on December 2019 at the age of 79. Norris, on the other hand, also died in prison in 2020 of natural causes. Until next time, humans, continue to stay safe out there.